Hi, and welcome to the Feel Inspired podcast. And I've got the most incredible guest today, and I'm so honored and privileged she made the time to come and do this today. So I'm very, very happy to introduce and welcome Seema Anand. And of course, this isn't the first time we've come across each other because you were on a TV show recently, which we'll talk about in a second. But before we do that, I always like to do this with my guests because I like to advertise my Spark Conversation card. So before we do anything else, I'd love for you to just say stop or pick a card. In fact, pick a card if you can reach it from there.
Okay, stop.
All right, should we say there?
Yeah.
Alrighty, go for it. What's that question?
So the question is, if you were a fictional character, what would be your catchphrase?
Oh, nice. Well, actually, you are a bit of a kind of a, not a fictional character, but a character as such. So
Well, I don't know what I wish I'd had a chance to think about this and think of something really clever. But at the moment, my catchphrase is, let's just change the narrative.
Nice. I love that.
I feel that everything that we do is so, the stories that we tell and the stories that we ignore equally are what define us. And, we don't learn everything that we know. We're not taught everything that we know. We just pick it up from the ambient stories around us. And so these stories are just so powerful. Yeah. And I always feel if you're going to create change, it's the stories that you have to change. So, my catchphrase is...
Let's change the narrative.
Let's change the narrative.
I love that. It's a beautiful... In fact, it's a beautiful start. So what do you think is the narrative we need to change? Or is, especially at the moment, with everything that has changed so fast in the last... sort of 5 years, since lockdown, since COVID, since just prior to that, I've seen a lot of differences, but I'm curious to find out what you've seen and what do you think is the narrative that needs to be changed?
So in what specifically? Because...
Good point as well. Let's clarify that. So I'm talking about human relationships and especially those romantic relationships as well. So we're talking about the whole spectrum from the process of dating to being in an intimate relationship, possibly a forever relationship.
I think that the first thing we need to do is put in a lot more effort into equally understanding each other. I just feel that for the longest time, there have been certain rules society has set up. I get to hear this all the time. Oh, there were no divorces in the years gone by. People were happier. And you say, yeah, that's because... women did not have the chance to be independent, so they kind of took a lot of stuff and maybe didn't raise their voice enough. And they're like, no, but now people aren't ready to adjust, they're not ready to compromise. And that's just not it. It's just that for the longest time, it was one gender that did all the adjusting and the compromise. That's just how it was set out. And I think that there is so much possibility for really good relationships, but they need to be partnerships, not you are my spouse kind of. You know what I mean? Like you are my wife kind of relation. It's not. It's got to be a partnership.
Yeah. I've just only done a couple of these, but I came up with this funny sort of meme character called Raj's Rishtas. And I see that a lot as well, where people still want the other person to fit into a box within their life, not a sharing, but it is that, there is still, especially from the... See, this is where I think, us Asians compared to, say, our English counterparts, just for comparison purposes, you look at Gen X, they've evolved quite a bit, but, in Indian culture, you still see a lot of that archaic mentality where I see men who want a certain thing, but I also see women who want a certain thing as well. And they haven't kind of grown from that. Like I say to people that, one of the challenges I face in doing what I do is reaching men who are over 45. Women is not a problem because they're all relatively active on social media. They might be there posting selfies or just celebrating their life. But I feel like that generation of men specifically haven't done that or don't want to or just aren't doing it. So for me, being social media being my only way to reach people or my prime way, it's harder to reach them. So I've got this abundance of women over 45 who are ready and waiting for their new Prince Charming, and yet I don't have the contingent of men. So
I think also the unfortunate thing is, even if the guys are on social media, I find, and it's a strange kind of phenomenon I've seen, that as women get older, they become more diverse in their personalities. They grow, they do more stuff, they learn more stuff, they get excited about things, they want to try out new experiences. And guys, as they get older, seem to go the other way. They kind of get more closed, they don't want to try more stuff. And I don't know why this happens. And I've seen this with my husband, for instance. I've seen it with all our friends. So I'm constantly saying this to my sons that, my sons are in their early 30s at the moment, that as you guys get older...
Shut the front door.
You need to actually watch yourselves.
Yeah, it's very easy, isn't it, to become complacent? But I'm glad there's so many role models for people like me at the moment. Right? I'm 47 now, but I see people like... the David Goggins, the Joe Rogan and stuff, and they are what I would term as go-getters. So I feel I get exactly what you're saying, because there's a part of me that is that type of character. But there's also a part of me that's almost like, maybe I just like being at home with my wife and my dog more. We both enjoy it.
That's absolutely fine. Exactly. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about growing your mind. I'm talking about expanding how you look at things.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, the world is changing. And if you're out there, you are going to have to change to keep up with the world. And yes, of course, it's very easy to sit back and say, well, this is what I'm used to. And so this is what I'll stay with. But, the Kama Sutra actually says, I try and tell people this often, that there is this section of the Kama Sutra called the 64 skills. And a lot of people seem to think that the 64 skills are like 64 ways to have sex. And it's not. There are 64 different things that you do. So the experiences, it's like singing, dancing, learning foreign languages, doing word riddles and puzzles, travel. There's also the botany, understanding animals and plants. And all of these things were meant to grow your personality.
Yeah.
Develop you into a more interesting person, because then you become more desirable. I mean, as a woman, let's say a woman in her 40s, who's out there in the world, who's doing her best to be really interesting and amazing, why would she want to be with somebody who doesn't fit the same criteria as her? Why would she make such an effort for herself and then think, yeah, well, I'll settle for somebody who's decided not to make an effort on themselves? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I love what you say. It's so true, because actually that was my journey in this foray in this area, and what I found was that as I started to learn and grow, I was doing various different things at the time. I was doing stand-up comedy. I was doing, started running, and I started reading a lot more books, listening to a lot more books. So I was growing. I was becoming more interesting intentionally as a person, I felt, which meant that I had more to talk about. People were, if I was talking to a woman, courting a woman, she would more likely be more intrigued with me. This guy's into all sorts of stuff. But I'm interested if you would agree with this take, right? So in the early days, I used to say that if you're a guy, from the pickup perspective, then what a woman will find attractive is that your status needs to be slightly higher than hers, even perceptually. So she's almost got to have something to learn from you, or to see you as something like, wow, like this guy's done something incredible, or he's doing something. So it's not necessarily he's ambitious, but he's doing as well. So there was an idea in my head that, okay, so as a guy, your job is to raise your status and maintain it just above hers. Not so that you're superior, but always have that edge in that desire, that drive, so that she feels she's got something to look up to as well. What I found as well in the last sort of, 20 years or so is obviously women have expanded themselves, and they have, raised the game, raised the bar for themselves and everyone else. So the guys have kind of been left behind a little bit. So there's a lot of men out there who don't now necessarily have the same status as a woman. So a lot of women are seeing guys with a lower status. When I say status, I'm not talking about just the things, the finer things, the cars, the money, all that kind of stuff. They're looking at personality. Like you said, his desire for growth. And I think that's where women are struggling, because they've elevated themselves, but there's fewer men who've caught up and gone ahead. Would you agree with that?
Okay, so let me put it this way. Suppose you go out today and you meet somebody at the gym, another guy, and you sit down and you want to chat to him. Now, you have a family, you have a wife, you have a home. What is going to make you want to spend time away from that and with this person. It is that he brings something to your life, just as a buddy, right? Why would you, in the same situation, if you're looking for a life partner, want to be with somebody who's not going to bring something to your life? And that could be anything. I think that the rules of what men were supposed to be like in the past were laid down by other men. Again, I'm going back to the Kama Sutra because I think it's an incredible text. There is an entire section in there on what women from different geographies like in lovemaking. And it's interesting because it sort of says, oh, well, women from this part of the country like to be kissed in this way. Women from this part of the country like to be kissed in that way. And you think, oh, interesting chapter, but where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
So basically, this is a time when men traveled more. Women did not travel. Men traveled, they met a lot of other women. They would go to brothels, they would meet courtesans, they'd meet prostitutes, whatever. And they came back with their experiences. And so when Vatsyan, the author of the Kama Sutra, writes down this book, he takes a sort of a poll, I guess, or he does a survey. And he finds out what women like, not from the women, but from the men who've come back.
Gotcha, yeah.
And these men are talking about what they have learned and come back. So it's got nothing to do with what the woman wanted.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's just been the way it has been for the longest time. It's only now that women have become more independent, women travel. You still don't get surveys of what women think guys like, because that's still seen as taboo. Oh my God, she's such a whore because she obviously went out and tried so many different men. Do you know what I mean? That just isn't done. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that this whole idea of what was expected from a man was laid down by men, not by women. And women, much like men, are different. So whereas one woman might really want somebody who's super powerful and drives this really fast car and looks a certain way, and another woman might totally want somebody who shares her love for poetry and is kind and gentle. So I don't think that we have to worry about the status, again, not material status, but the status being higher, but definitely that you have to add something to somebody's life. It's not enough to say, I'm a man, hence you will accept me. You have to be worthy of being accepted.
Yeah.
And that's the case with human beings.
I love that. So I want to continue down this track, and then obviously what you do specifically. But I'd love, because I don't know much about your history as well, so I'd love to know, like, how did you and what made you choose to get into this field? What was the driving force? Where did that sort of come from? What challenges did you face along the way, if any? And then, you know, what's made you continue this work as well, especially talking about such open subjects and intimacy and to every possible level? You know, did you ever face any backlash? Have you, so where did it come from? You know, what are some of the trials and tribulations along the way? And what do you love about this work? What do you see as the outcome of this work?
So I am a storyteller. And I work with stories because, as I said at the beginning, stories are just the most powerful tool of influence. They do actually define us, our identity, our behavior. You know, we tell stories of a man coming home drunk and beating up his wife, but she's so good. She's so good. She never, ever goes out and dishonors him. She never says anything about him. So now we've qualified that a good woman is the one who keeps quiet.
Yeah.
The one who now is raising her voice and saying, how dare you, I'm going to hit you right back, is now the bad woman. So I learned very early on in life that these stories that we hear around us all the time were created to define our roles in society. And gradually, I realized as I delved further into the stories, we never tell stories of a woman's right to her own body, her own pleasure. It's always somebody else's property. She's looking for pleasure. She has to get permission. It's like, with this person at this time under these circumstances. And it intrigued me because I thought, well, there must be some stories that we've done away with. There must be something out there. I mean, we're the land that wrote the Kama Sutra. There must be something out there. So I started my journey by looking for those stories. That was my only aim, just to see what it is that we had shut down. And this was about 24 years ago.
Nice.
I thought, I'll look for a few stories, write a little essay, move on. 24 years later, I am so entrenched. I mean, there's just so much more to explore, and it is a fabulous subject. Trials and tribulations aplenty. I was saying this to my husband this morning, that years ago. So for the longest time, I was a storyteller, a mythologist, and I talked about the mythologies from our ancient past, the stories from our ancient past. As I started to shift into my work in the erotic literatures, I suddenly noticed right in the beginning that the High Commission stopped inviting me for certain events. Like suddenly I was persona non grata over there.
Okay.
And it moved on from there. So basically, yeah, it was a very difficult journey and continued to be very difficult for a long time because I lost a lot of friends over it. I got a lot of abuse for it. I got a lot of people looking down their nose, sort of avoiding me. I got people cutting me out of my work. So I work freelance. Suddenly found that there were people actually saying to other people, if you work with her, I won't come and work with you. So it's been a lot of shit along the way. The two things that have kept it together for me, my children, who've been incredible in how they've supported me through it all. And I am really impressed with the fact that for a lot of times they were getting the backlash. They were getting a lot of abuse because of me. And they never ever came and said, Mom, would you just stop because I can't deal with this. I mean, they've been like my backbone, and I just so love them for that. And the other, I think, is a tiny handful of friends who have never wavered in their support. And I realize actually that if there's even one person out there supporting you, it's enough. It really is. It gives you the strength. And of course, my own determination to just do this, because I cannot understand why this should be a taboo subject. It is the most basic instinct. We think about it all the time. It's part of our lives. It's what defines so many of our actions. Our sexuality, our desires, our attraction towards people, how we feel. Why should it be such a taboo? So I decided that I was going to stick to that. And I think what drives me now, I mean, we won't even bother with the online trolls. I mean, they're just scum. And they have been put on this earth to be scum. So they have to, I guess, fulfill their purpose in life. But what keeps me going is that now when I meet people who follow me just randomly, you know, there was a time when I first started and they would stop me and they'd say, oh, we follow you. Can I get a photo, etc. Now people will say, thank you for what you do. I have learned so much from you. You've changed my life. And I think that is worth staying your ground for.
Yeah.
I want this world to be a better place for my children, and I have to do my bit.
Yeah. There's quite a lot of contention at the moment, isn't it, in certain parts of the world, I think, about sexual education. Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you. It's so important. And, you know, my first exposure was watching a video in a classroom where the teacher was kind of hiding his head a little bit in the corner. And I was quite fortunate that my family, I was the youngest of all my siblings in my family, sort of made their attempts to talk about certain things, but at least they tried. But, you know, there's some people I come across in my line of work. It's crazy, some of the stuff I see, because obviously people are very open with me, but how much lack of knowledge there is out there. And it's not their fault. But as you said, of course, this subject, even in this day and age, can still be such a taboo. And therefore, people are not learning what they should learn, really, and understand about our human biology, everything in between that people just don't get. Like, for example, I talked about this recently as well, that there are certain men I come across who are single in their 50s, and I don't say this because I want to insult these guys, but I'm more sharing from that point of view. Look, this goes to show how bad we are as a society of educating men, and not just men, by the way, everyone. But they were talking about how they've never been married, never met anyone, they still want to get married and have kids, and I'm like, you're in your 50s. Like, do you know, can I tell you a quick story? The one story that really changed my mind about this was about roughly around 18 months to 2 years ago. So it was a mum who came to me and said, can you help me find a partner for my daughter? I was like, yeah, sure, no worries. I said, how old is she? She goes, 19. I was like, that's a bit young. She goes, yeah, I'm not in any particular rush. I'm not forcing or anything. But my mindset is this, it might take a few years to find someone, by which time she could be 22, 23, 24. And then maybe she meets someone and they want to spend a couple of years getting to know each other. And by which time it could be 25, 26. And then maybe they want to, then they want to get married, and that might take a year to plan. So they could be 27. Maybe when they get married, they're 27. They might want to spend a few years independent of kids. So maybe they want to start having kids at 30. So when she told me that, I was like, oh my God, you make a lot of sense, actually. Because normally I would when I speak to people, my coaching differs greatly from I've changed the age now from when people are below 30 to over 30 because of that reason. And I ask people very candidly, look, do you want kids? Because then you need to work backwards so you can understand how long it's going to take you if that's something you truly want. It doesn't happen for some of us, didn't happen for me. I found out at a very young age I'm never going to have children. And then that had to become part of my choice as well if I wanted whatever I wanted to do as a result. And it was to not have kids. And luckily I met my wife who was equally not as interested in having kids. So, it became easy. But, it's just that, but people don't understand those simple things or don't give it consideration. So they never really think it through, but they just think it'll be okay. It'll be okay. It doesn't matter how long it takes. But then in my line of work and everything that I've seen in my life is short is not a hyperbole statement. It's not just a cliche. It genuinely means something. And so I drill this into people and make sure they know and they're aware of, yes, that actually means something. You have to, if you want something, you've got to work at it. You've got to fight for it. So in all your travels and everything you're doing at the moment, what's some of the things, actually, let me rephrase that. What's some of the patterns you're noticing now? Because of what you mentioned earlier as well, more sexual freedom, more liberation. So what are some of the patterns and the changes you're seeing in mindsets, both in men and women, whether it's openness or closed-mindedness? And are you seeing any particular changes in terms of their preferences, what people like and so forth?
So I think that, so let's start with men. I think that there is a divide. I think that there are the intelligent, normal, nice guys who understand that the partner that they're going to look for will also have her preferences, her needs, and are out there to make sure that whoever they're with, that they create a partnership. And then there are still the Andrew Taters who have this thing of what they want and what they need. And that's all that matters. And I think that there's a very definite divide between the two. Because the people who follow me, for instance, I get to see a lot of the ugly comments, because they're the ones who are, the people who are trolling you are always louder for whatever reason. And they're always more visible.
Yeah.
But when I get out amongst people, you realize that actually there's a lot of people out there who are trying their hardest to understand how to be better partners. And I love that. I love the fact that there are people out there who are trying to understand how to be a better partner and making an effort towards it. I find with women, there is, after many, many, many centuries of being the person with absolutely no rights, with absolutely no access to agency, with no access to monetary independence or decision-making, they are now very determined to get to this point. They finally have that. They've seen what their mothers have gone through, a lot of the young people, and they don't want a repeat of that. So they are trying their hardest to make sure that they don't end up in the same mess again. And I think that with this generation, it's the starting point. they have no precedent to learn from, which means that they're learning by themselves. Both sides are going to make mistakes. But I think what I see is a determination to try. And I like that. I really like what I see. I think that there is also going to be a sort of I think also that the fight for freedom, and I am going to call it the struggle or the fight for freedom for a lot of women, even though they may be young, independent women, they still have conservative families who are pushing them in one direction. So a lot of them are very torn. And it's also difficult for them to step out into this world. I get a lot of women writing into me saying, I met so-and-so, I met this guy on one of the dating apps, and I really liked him. But then he said, immediately within 2 days, said, oh, we should have sex, or send me nudes. And I was like, no, this is too early. And the moment I said that, he's ghosted me. And they're now upset and they're trying to figure out what the hell happened. Yeah. So there's nowhere for them to go and talk to and say, this happens. Do you know what I mean? It's going to have to settle into an area where this has happened for a couple of generations. People understand, well, okay, there are some people who are always going to do this. What you need to do is move on, or you ignore them, or you then block them, or whatever it is. This kind of thing doesn't just arrive out of nowhere. The narrative has to be set.
And where does that get set from?
It gets set from experience. So it's when people actually start to do this, where there's more of, whatever everybody's doing right now, when more of it is done, when these relationships are formed, when these boundaries are created, when these conversations are had, it's from there that the next lot will learn, and the next lot, these people themselves will learn. None of this is something that most people have gone through. I mean, when I was growing up, we didn't have dating apps.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for me, you would go out and meet somebody, and whether you liked them, or, whichever way, whether they liked you back, and yes, you would get ghosted or not, but it was still within a circuit of everybody knowing everybody. Do you know what I mean? Like now, today, I can be on a dating app and meet somebody clear across the globe and start a relationship with that person and have absolutely no idea of their background or what they're like, or there's just, the rules are changing. And we only get to understand how we're going to be once we start being.
Yeah.
So I think that this needs to, I had somebody write to me saying that she comes from a very conservative family. She's engaged. Her fiancé is bisexual. And she said he's totally attached to me emotionally. But he finds that his sexual desires are with men. So emotionally, he's attached to her. She's the only one that he wants to be with. But to have sex, he actually needs a guy. And he has his own thing of, what kind of men, etc. And she said, I'm trying to understand. I want to be understanding, but I need more information on how to deal with it. Will it impact my sex life in the future? Will it impact our relationship if we can never have sex together or whatever? So she had really clear-cut, intelligent questions. But this is what I mean. There is no precedent. There's nobody to say, well, this could happen or that could happen or this will happen. That will now come from when we build up these experiences.
See, I when you tell me that as well, I think to myself, how incredible that, she's brave enough to obviously raise that question with someone, that her husband's brave enough to actually tell her. Because, again, I see it as well. Like the amount of people I speak to, for example, women who've come to me, for example, who've met someone and it later turned out that their partner was gay or whatever. And again, in one sense, thankfully, it came out and they can go live their lives now. But at the time, they had to go through that pain and heartache first. Whereas obviously they've had this person and her partner have obviously been able to have at least up to a certain level of mature conversations.
A conversation, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And as she said, she's from a very conservative family. And I think that that's really brilliant. But this is what I mean about setting the narrative, or at least creating a precedent, so that it's only when other people have walked before you and done certain things can you learn from them. Right now, we're all trying to understand this for ourselves without anybody teaching us.
Yeah. That's how I learned as well. I was literally just had to start nowhere from scratch, from ground zero, and read books. And it initially started with watching a lot of pickup artists to begin with, but it was just that element for me was just to build my confidence kind of thing.
Also, I find that culturally,
Yeah.
the advice that we give has to be so different.
Yeah.
Because what I would advise somebody in America who's going through a certain relationship crisis, and what I would say to somebody in India, are two very different things, because culturally what they can or can't do,
Yeah, of course.
and what makes sense to them or what doesn't, is very, very different.
Yeah. And this is why I mentioned it earlier as well, because I know obviously in America you've got such a huge divide, that the kind of almost Christian, very orthodox view of the world versus the very liberal view and stuff. And so yes, it's very polarized there as well. So it's so different.
It is.
Wherever
and
you go.
If you were a young person in this country, as let's say if you were to meet a man tomorrow, I'm taking it as a binary kind of man-woman thing. So let's say as a young woman, if you were to meet a young man, you're both 30 years old, he will pretty much expect that at some point you've had a couple of relationships before. There's no way that you're going to get to mid-30s and never been with anybody. It's more than likely that you would have had a partner or two. In India, we're still looking at people who are sort of out there on the I want a hymen.
Yeah. And it's almost seen as altruistic, isn't it? Almost in a way, they're like, someone's virginity puts them on a certain pedestal, perhaps, whatever, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
And it's some sort of righteous
You should see
endeavor.
the stuff,
Yeah.
the kind of comments that I get on virginity. Do you know that a few months ago, there were in 2 cities in India, men actually held protests, like public march protests on the road, carrying banners saying no seal, no deal,
Yeah.
meaning if the hymen is broken, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, not only do I think that that's thoroughly abusive as a comment about no seal, but also, like, seriously, don't. I mean, if you don't want to marry somebody or don't want to be with somebody who's not a virgin, don't. But who's forcing you? Like, why are you out there trying to say that none of the women should be having any kind of relationship because you think that you need a larger pond to choose from? I mean, these are the guys who probably aren't going to get picked anyway. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to say this, but
No,
a lot of
no,
them.
I get it.
Well,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, the comments that I got, they were so misogynistic. They were so abusive. Honestly, they're nobody's first choice.
And it's incredibly naive as well, isn't it? Because obviously it can split for a number of reasons, right? Not just from sex, right? So it's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But also, the thing is, I totally understand that if you feel that you want to be one of these people who only wants to marry a virgin, I get it. But that's your choice. And then it's up to the woman whether she chooses you back. I don't understand the need for a public parade. I mean, like, honestly, the non-virgins are not lining up outside your door saying, take me, take me. You know what I mean? That's what bugged me. It's like, if you don't want a virgin, that's your personal, or if you want a virgin, that's your personal preference. Keep it personal.
Yeah. It's that expectation, is that right? And I demand this, I deserve this,
Yeah.
I must get it. And it's just ridiculous, isn't it? I still see a lot of that in this day and age. But on the flip side, I see a lot of maturity.
Exactly.
So I see a lot of people kind of starting to open up, being not afraid to ask these questions and have the slightly more difficult conversations. So I read John and Julie Gottman's The 8 Dates book recently, and
Okay.
it's quite good. It's very good. And one chapter is specifically dedicated to the intimacy and having those conversations with your partner about what you like, what you don't like, what you like more of, all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's such a powerful tool, but it's one of those things that people are still very afraid to say what they actually want, what's important to them, what they'd like to try, even just for the sake of even just being able to say, at least we tried it. Even if you don't like it or not, it doesn't matter, but you've had those conversations and you've done different things, you can say you've done it.
But so many people are so afraid to actually tell their partner what they want or don't want, because one is that you're viewed as, how do you know you don't want this? Have you had that experience before? So you get shamed and judged for that. The other is that if it's slightly outside the box, I get this all the time. Men writing and saying, my girlfriend or my wife said that she wants me to do this, and this is horrible. I would never do this. And she doesn't know. And, literally, like, she doesn't know what she wants. She's watching porn, and as your partner, she's being vulnerable enough to tell you. Okay, then we have it on the other side, where a man will say to his, let's say, like I said, I'm sorry, I'm keeping it binary over here, just for purposes of conversation.
Definitely.
The man will say to, let's say, his wife, I want to try this. And she'll be like, nope, I refuse to do this. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
And then there is all the judgment. And it's really sad, because there is an equal number of women who will then say, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Why would you even think of trying this? And, you end up feeling shamed and put down.
Yeah. And that's, you see, I think this leads on nicely on to the next kind of point that I wanted to ask, because I think this is something I get asked a lot. And obviously I give my fair share of, I use the word advice loosely, just guidance, suggestions, and just kind of help in this area. Because, when two people meet, they often have questions about, okay, so the early stages of intimacy, when does it happen? How do I bring it up? How do we talk about it? How do we talk about the various elements of it? If one partner wants to go faster than the other one's not ready. And then it comes on to potentially desires and what one person's likes and so on and so forth. So what would you say to people who are now currently in a state where they're looking for someone for whatever reason, whether it's, their first one, or whether they've had loads and, or they've been married before, but to not make the mistakes in the past, to actually have some of these slightly more, we say difficult, they shouldn't be, but of course it might be difficult for you because you've, never had this experience before. But how should people start bringing this up with someone in a very compassionate way, in a very loving, understanding way, so that they can talk it out in a mature way?
So I think the first thing is, of course, to understand exactly what it is that you are trying to say. And I think many of us don't actually know that. We have ideas, we have a thought in our head, but I find this with myself all the time, for instance, that I know what I don't want, but I've never actually put it into words. And I just automatically assume that the other person will know. And then when it doesn't happen like that, then you're like, oh, but this is awful.
It's a lot of mind reading that goes on,
there's a lot of mind reading that goes on. So I think that the first thing to do is to actually understand for yourself what it is that those boundaries are, or what it is that those questions are. And I always say that, okay, it's very difficult sometimes to just have it in a conversation, okay, we're going out for a beautiful date, we're going to have candlelight dinner, we're going to have this beautiful wine between us, and then we're going to discuss this stuff. It doesn't happen that way. It is the worst way to have any kind of conversations. So I always think that it's better to schedule that conversation in. People have this idea also about, things should be spontaneous. You shouldn't schedule. I am a great one for scheduling stuff. It's a great way to say, okay, you know what? I have a few things that I need to ask about the relationship. You probably do. Should we do this as a relationship question date? Yeah. And come in with your questions and actually discuss that through. Lay down your rules. Okay, this is non-judgmental. But you know what I'm like? It's almost like you put yourself in a different space, because mentally, that's what you're going to do. Whereas when you're on a date, when you're sort of trying to impress the other person and, you're trying to be at your best, suddenly to have these questions flung at you might either take you unawares, off guard, or you find yourself answering maybe not in the most honest way because
Yeah.
you're trying to sort of take this forward a little bit. And I think it's important when you have your, let's schedule the conversation.
Yeah.
The other thing that I always recommend is that when you decide that you are in a sort of relationship, even if it's not fully a relationship, once a month, you should have like a review date where you make a little list of all the things that you absolutely loved that the other person did, some of the things that you felt a little bit weird about, and could you have done them slightly differently. And again, the rules have to be that we're not going to be judgy or fighting, but we're actually saying what we felt and could you help me out with this. It makes such a huge difference because it gets the communication out. It's in a slightly less intimidating way, and you're prepared for it.
I love that. And I think that this is kind of one of the things I say to people. So I had a bit of a debate with someone on my on Facebook recently about this, because I put out one of these videos where I was talking about that over between 2008 and 2011 I had about 300 dates, and that's how I learned everything that I learned that I teach people today. And they were like, no, that's so wrong. That's like, it should be that's like, not letting fate decide. I think it's artificially inserting yourself into, and I was like, to me that seems really weird, right? And it's like what you said, right? Some people think that scheduling or actually putting an effort or conscious effort into something takes away somehow from the romanticism, the spontaneity, or letting the universe or God take its toll. But actually I'm like, no, that adds to it. And so I think that having, like you said, those scheduled or pre-prepared conversations can actually add to the romance. Most people are afraid it takes something away, but actually look forward to what it can add, because it more than often than not adds something to it.
When we talk about creativity, you realize, I mean, as a storyteller, as somebody who performs on stage, I can tell you that I need a parameter, a periphery for my energy within which to perform. If I have no periphery, my energy floats off into it's the blue sky up there. Your energy is gone. You cannot control energy over the cosmos. So you need to have it within that. And then once I have my periphery, once I know I have my boundaries within which I can contain my energy, I can be incredible. I am out there. I've got you totally hooked on my story.
You're in your flow, right?
I'm in my flow. I know what I'm doing because I can use that energy. If I'm sort of pulling it back from the cosmic powers, I don't have that energy to put across to you. It's the same thing with creativity. If you give yourself a periphery within which to be creative or within which to be romantic, that romance is so much more. This idea of spontaneity is, I think it's so misunderstood. People, like you said, they think, there should be just this thing that we see in films, where you see each other across the room, you just float together and everything happens. Good relationships require a serious amount of work. There is nothing spontaneous about a good relationship. You have worked at it. You've made sure that both of you worked at making sure that you want to keep it on track. Like, everything that you do has to be done consciously. And within that consciousness, then comes the spontaneity. That's a whole different thing. But, every single day that you wake up, you're a different person. You aren't who you were yesterday. Why do you expect that your partner is going to be the same? Why do you feel that everything that you do is going to be the same?
That's why I hate that statement. I want someone to love me for who I am. I'm like, no, I say this to my wife. I don't ever want you to love me for who I am. I want you to love me for who I'm capable of becoming, and that I'm actually living up to that. I actually tell her, please stop loving me if I ever become complacent. You have my permission to walk away from me, because that's never who I want to become ever. And I don't want to be loved for that. I want to be loved for the fact that I'm living up to what I can become, because whenever I hear that statement, to me, it's one of the most lazy statements we have. But I think very few people understand it.
Yeah, it's one of those soda can, these things, you know, that the
yeah.
little slogan that you see.
Bumper sticker type thing. Yeah.
So I think that people just don't realize that it's, again, like there's sex and there's good sex. You want good sex, you really have to work at it. You have to work at it.
It doesn't just happen like in the movies.
It doesn't just happen. You don't, I mean, even for, let's say, penetration to happen, you have to negotiate your sexual organs. They won't just, the way that our sexual organs are placed on our body, they don't just glide together.
Yeah. And it's people's shapes and sizes and everything as well. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that we have to learn that we work at it every morning. You know, I always say your orgasm is different every day. Every time that you have an orgasm, some days your pleasure is, or not so much orgasm, let's say pleasure. Some days you're feeling really chilled and your pleasure is all about feeling that chilled kind of vibe. On other days you're feeling really passionate and that's what you want to do. You want to be clawing your way into, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One day you're feeling totally like, whatever, I want to think of England. Let's do, you know. Your pleasure is different every day. You are different every day. Your mood is different every day. You need to understand how to be with your partner with those different moods.
Yeah.
Their mood and their pleasures are different every day. Every day we grow. Today I might wake up and decide that I really want to pursue, learning Italian. And that's going to take up my headspace because now I'm certainly trying to do this. And maybe 6 p.m. is when my partner comes home from work, and that's where I'm normally there to greet him and give him a big kiss, and then we have that alone time. But today, I'm sorry, I'm doing my Italian.
Yeah.
You know, I'm working on that. You shift, you adjust, right? It's so straightforward. We all know that. You understand that.
Yeah.
Or I give you that time and then I go back to that, but my brain is over there. Whatever. The point is we're different. So we work towards saying, yes, I've got my brain in a different space, but now I'm coming back to you and I'm giving you that time. It's not spontaneous.
I often say to single people, if you think single life is hard, wait till you're in a real relationship. And actually, you know, I say to everyone, I think the when people talk about statistics and marriage and breakups and divorce and all that, and I think almost to me that's in one sense a positive thing, because I think to myself that it's almost indicative and demonstrative of what effort and hard work a relationship actually needs. So when you look at those people who've been together, who are thriving as a couple in a relationship, it's not a testament to the fact that they've just happened to be in love every day. It's a testament to how much they've worked at that relationship every day. So when we see these numbers of people and relationships breaking apart, but I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's a testament to teach everyone a lesson that just because you love each other in the beginning doesn't mean you're going to love each other 10 years from now. And that's going to take work. So for me and my wife, we've just had our 8-year engagement anniversary, 9 years together in total, 7-year wedding anniversary. And my friend rang me the other day, was just joking around. He's like, "Have you gone past your 7-year itch?" Yeah. And I was like, but it's we've faced our fair share of challenges, less in the relationship sense, more in the life just general sense. But I think where we are at is because we work at it, and it's not just, neither of us take it as a given. We know that it requires, my favorite word in that respect is effort. It does require effort to keep the relationship alive, to talk, to listen, to communicate, to have fun, to be playful. I think where we have our strength is that me being a natural joker, and my wife is as well, but we just laugh a lot. We laugh so much. I think it's been very rarely a day that's gone by in our 9 years that we haven't laughed together. And I don't think we've ever gone to bed angry at each other. I think there may have been one exception to that, but I think generally speaking, when we have a day where we have a fight, have an argument, it's generally dealt with relatively quickly. Because I used to be the type of person I'd run away. I was always the person who'd need time to go away, process before I could handle and deal with any kind of conflict. But yeah, so I think that it's just what I see is the perception of some people is that when you meet someone, almost like in the movies, you fall in love, the sex will be perfect, everything will be good, but they just forget that element. Like, I have another saying as well that, a wedding is just that party for a day. When you get married, it's just that, but the marriage is what comes next, and that's where the real work comes from.
See, but this is again the narrative we've been taught. You see it in the films. You have the struggles of the two people, and then finally they come together. And it's like happily ever after.
The happily ever
worst
after is
bloody line ever,
Yes.
because no, this is actually day one.
Yeah.
Of the challenges.
Definitely.
Or you have it, at the end, the end.
Yeah.
It's not. This
Always
is the
ends on that
beginning.
happy note, isn't it? Yeah.
It's, oh God. So I've been married almost 40 years. Got married in 85. So almost 40 years. And we've had a lot of challenges along the way. You fall out of love.
Yeah.
You have to work at falling back into love again. You have to work at understanding what love means for you. It's not the same. It's not the same as it was on day one of my marriage. It's very different. You learn that, okay, actually, maybe I want to just finish this relationship now because, frankly, I think we've reached the end of the line and there's nothing left between us. I learned that after having said that yes, okay, there was maybe something there and we tried again, built it up again. And it's not just been the once, it's been a couple of times, 2 or 3 times that this has happened in my life. And you go through a lot of misery and unhappiness and you think, okay, this is it. I just can't take this anymore. And then you start again. And I think that when you start again, it's never the same as it was before. It changes. You lay down new rules. You understand why it is that you're staying with each other. That's really, really important. And the whole thing is a lot of bloody hard work. And not only has our relationship changed many, many times, we have changed many times, there are also the challenges of other things. So, for instance, my husband is 10 years older than I am. And we are now at that point where he's retired, he's at home, I'm working and traveling. So the roles have completely switched. He's looking after the house, he's looking after the cooking, the laundry, whatever. I'm the one who's out there, whether I'm traveling abroad, whether I'm in meetings, where I'm earning. He's no longer earning. That whole sort of thing, the dynamics change. And all of that has an impact on the relationship. And I've realized that the only thing that stays is your determination to either be together or not be together, your desire to be together or not be together, and your determination to understand how you're going to negotiate the challenges that come up every day. Because every day there is a new challenge. But we're still together out of choice. I'm also financially independent. I don't need to be there if I didn't want to. So this is what I'm trying to say. We're both financially independent. We both took that decision to still be together. And I can just tell you that literally, I think, most people, when they've been married this long, you do go through every experience imaginable. I've been there. It's very much about working very hard, about swallowing a lot of stuff, about compromising and adjusting on both sides, about realizing what are your boundaries, about realizing what is or is totally not acceptable and what you might be able to deal with, and how much support you need in that and how much you need to deal with this by yourself. It's a huge growing experience. Relationships are not easy. They're just very, very difficult.
Yeah. I love what you said there as well, that, it's a choice, because there's an old quote, we fall in love by chance, but we stay in love by choice. And I so agree with that for the most part. It's so true. But I think it's easily forgotten.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think also words like love or lust, I don't any longer know what in love means. I know that I have a certain feeling, a depth of feeling for my husband. I know that I care about how he feels. I care about his comfort. I care about what he's thinking. And I'm very conscious that I don't want to be the person to hurt him. And to my mind, that is love. It's not this little bit of rainbow and sparkles, So my daughter was laughing. So she lives in the Netherlands. And I've just been in India on work. And so she called her dad and she said, are you missing Mom? And he said, yeah, what's a soldier without his commanding officer? And she said, oh, Mom, that's so cute. And I said, yeah, he's just good with words. Let's not get carried away with it. But you know what I mean? It's just that.
But it's a beautiful sentiment.
It's a cute thing to say. Yeah. But also, this was something that, you were asking earlier about my challenges. So because I am so out there, I go out, I travel, I'm on my own. The next thing that you do to put a woman down is you point fingers at her morality. So, of course, I was told constantly that I was having an affair with this one, I was having an affair with that one, I was having an affair with this one. I mean, the amount of affairs I'm supposed to have had, I'm surprised I had time to eat, frankly, like even have a meal in between affairs. But I was also thinking that we had to work really hard on that aspect because, yes, I am away a lot. When I work, I am staying in a hotel. I am out there on my own. I could be doing anything. Who's to know? So the building up of that trust takes a lot of time and effort. That does not come automatically.
Yeah.
He has to be able to trust me enough. He has to be able to trust himself to trust me. I have to have the courage in me to be able to say that if he's out on his own and if he's meeting with other people, that, that's fine. I trust him. But it takes courage to trust the other person too.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife and I, again, have this kind of conversation, and people have commented on this as well, because obviously the majority of my clientele of women is about 70-30. It used to be about 80-20. But, people have asked me as well, like, does your wife ever get jealous, or like, how do you feel? And I'm like, yeah, if anything, it actually makes me love my wife even more, because actually, on a serious note, the fact that she has so much trust in me makes me love her even more, because she's never once ever questioned me, never once ever thought, and I sometimes end up having very intimate conversations with women about them. But actually, if anything, that just makes me love my wife even more. The fact that she 100% trusts me and never, ever, ever questions it. So, and part of it, on a very gross level, I think to myself, if I was with any other woman who was jealous, God, I couldn't do my work. Like, if I even had that thought of being with someone else, like, I would think to myself, like, that thought crosses my mind sometimes. Could I then still do what I love? Because how would she feel about, being with someone who has to do this for his line of work? A silly thought process, but these little things that just go through our head.
No,
and
it's so normal.
Yeah.
That's human.
Yeah.
That is human.
Yeah.
And that is the reality. It's so easy to write a textbook on how you should behave, how you should think. You should not think like that. We're human beings.
True. Very true. Well, we're almost, that's gone so quick, by the way. We're almost at the end. Before I do that, though, first, of course, I did also bring one of these Spark Conversation cards for you. And also, as well, it just because it arrived, I actually got these today as well. The Connect Asian pens for when I do Hey Gorgeous this weekend. So anyway, I put it all in the bag for you.
At Hey Gorgeous.
Oh, yes, you're going to be there this weekend as well. Excellent.
Thank you.
So, but yes, feel free to use that for any guests, if you're doing any other podcasts, or even if you're on stage at any point, whatever you need to use it for, please feel free to. But I just wanted to say thank you, because I know you're an incredibly busy woman. Thank you for gracing the Feeling Inspired podcast. I can't even say it now. Feeling Inspired podcast. And it's been a lovely conversation, and hopefully there'll be a follow-up at some point in the future. But I wanted to say thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Amit. It's been a pleasure.
No, it's
pun intended.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please. Oh, and last thing, of course, where can people find you?
Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. And the handle is Seema Anand Storytelling.
Nice. Thank you so much as well. So please do follow her, and thank you again for being on the podcast as well. And I'm very looking forward to a second conversation at some point in the future. Thank you.